Southland continues its rebuild, going from 10 to 11 with the UTRGV Vaqueros. The University of Texas Rio Grande Valley has a 32,000 enrollment, and it's located only 15 miles from the Mexico border. In 1952, what was then Pan American College became a four-year college, and 11 years later, in 1963, the Pan American Broncs won the NAIA championship. In 1989, Pan American University became the University of Texas Pan American, UTPA, and in 2016, the Texas Pan American Broncs became the Rio Grande Valley Vaqueros after a merger of UTPA and UT Brownsville into UTRGV. Vaqueros football will launch in 2025 at Robert and Janet Vacar Stadium after a $20 million donation. UTRGV is also building a $45 million performance center. Despite its 32,000 enrollment, only 148 UTRGV freshmen came from Texas counties outside the Rio Grande Valley. So from a student recruitment perspective, UTRGV can grow its enrollment even larger by penetrating those areas in Texas that are not the Rio Grande Valley. And the Southland has three such areas that's within driving distance, with schools in Corpus Christi 2.5 hours away, San Antonio 3.5 hours away, and Houston 5.5 hours away. The move to the Southland would also be beneficial when looking at the alumni distribution perspective. Taking the Wall Street Journal's database of where graduates move after college, their database has 7.1% of UTRGV alumni residing in Houston and 6.7% of UTRGV alumni residing in San Antonio, and both Houston and San Antonio are home to Southland schools. The move to the Southland will alleviate that travel burden that UTRGV had been facing for many years in the WAC. In the WAC, UTRGV didn't have any schools less than a 7-hour drive away. There was Tarleton 7 hours away, Abilene Christian 7.5, UTA 7.5, and Stephen F. Austin 7.5. And then all those Utah, Arizona, California, and then Seattle schools were obviously a flight. Whereas in the Southland, they have 4 schools that are closer than the closest school in the WAC, as Corpus Christi is 2.5 hours away, Incarnate Word is 3.5 hours away, Houston Christian is 5.5 hours away, and Lamar is 6.5 hours away. And then McNeese is still a bus trip away at 7.5 hours. And then all the other schools, Texas A&M Commerce, Northwestern State, Nicholls State, SLU, and UNO, I'm not sure if they would fly or bus trip to those, but they would have the option of busing non-revenue sports there, as all those bus trips are between 8.5 hours and 10.5 hours. The storyline in the background is the conference shuffle going on between the Southland and the WAC in recent years. Back in December 2020, it was reported that Abilene Christian, Stephen F. Austin, Sam Houston State, and Lamar would leave the Southland for the WAC. Of course, since then, Sam Houston State has gone FBS. And then a year later, announced in November 2021, Incarnate Word followed the exodus out of the Southland and into the WAC. But then a few months later started a reverse migration, as in April 2022, it was announced that Lamar would be moving back from the WAC to the Southland. And then a couple months after that, in June 2022, it was announced that Incarnate Word would go back on its deal to join the WAC and instead remain in the Southland. So they never ended up officially playing in the WAC, even though that they announced that they would join. And now a couple years later, in March 2024, UTRGV is departing the WAC for the Southland. Looking at athletic budgets in the school year of 21-22, per the Department of Education's EADA database, the top row is each school's overall athletic budget, and then the middle row is how much of that athletic budget is devoted to student aid money. So the bottom row is what of their athletic budget is left over after you isolate that student aid money. And once you do that isolation, Incarnate Word would have the largest athletic budget, followed by Lamar, Texas A&M Commerce, and then fourth would be UTRGV. And of course, UTRGV starts football in 2025. So once they start football, there's a good chance that UTRGV could be near the top of the Southland in athletic budget. Now, here are the football expenses per that EADA database. Keep in mind that higher tuition will inflate the private's expenses. So you have Incarnate Word at the top, followed by Houston Christian, but we don't know what those budgets would look like once you take away all those scholarship money for football. And following them would be Lamar, SLU, McNeese, Commerce, Northwestern State, Nicholls State, and then UTRGV starts in the fall of 2025. Now men's basketball expenses. Corpus Christi tops the Southland at $1.9 million, which would rank 255th in Division I. UTRGV at $1.86 million ranks 260th in Division I, and that would rank second in the Southland. So UTRGV's budget can compete much better in the Southland than it would in the WAC, where they had to go up against schools like Grand Canyon. UTRGV has had a long history of hopping between conferences all the way back in their Texas Pan American days. In the Trans-America Athletic Conference, they were conference mates with Hardin-Simmons, what was then Houston Baptist, the Oklahoma City Chiefs, the Centenary Gentlemen, what was then Northeast Louisiana, but is today ULM, Samford, Mercer, Northwestern State, Little Rock, Georgia Southern. And then they eventually joined the American South, where they were conference mates with Louisiana, Louisiana Tech, UNO, Lamar, Arkansas State, and UCF. Then they joined the Sun Belt, where they were conference mates with Lamar, Little Rock, Arkansas State, Jacksonville, UCF, Western Kentucky, South Alabama, Louisiana Tech, UNO, and Louisiana. And then the Great West with Utah Valley, North Dakota, South Dakota, what was then Houston Baptist, Chicago State, NJIT. Of course, that was a conference that did not have an auto bid. And for the past however many years, they've been in the WAC with a barrage of conference mates like Seattle, Idaho, Cal State Bakersfield, UMKC, Chicago State, Sam Houston State, Lamar, Cal Baptist, Grand Canyon, Utah Tech, who was previously Dixie State, Southern Utah, Utah Valley, New Mexico State, Abilene Christian, Tarleton State, UTA, and Stephen F. Austin. And now they will be joining the Southland with Commerce, Lamar, Houston Christian, Incarnate Word, Corpus Christi, Northwestern State, McNeese, Nicholls State, SLU, and UNO. Texas Pan American was in the Trans-America Athletic Conference for 2 years from 78 to 80. After a period of independence, they would be in the American South for 4 years from 87 to 91. A merger would bring them into the Sun Belt for about 7 years, where they were conference mates from 91 to 98. After a decade plus of being independent, Texas Pan American would spend 4 years in the non-auto bid Great West. And then in 2013, Texas Pan American would find a home in the WAC. They would soon be renamed UTRGV, and they would spend 11 years in the WAC. And now they will join their future home, the Southland, this fall.